Welcome to the Uncharted podcast. I am your host, Inés Franklin. My hope for you today is that we discover faith beyond the boundaries. Uncharted is intended to be a safe place for you to listen, learn, and challenge yourself along your journey of faith. May grace and peace be with you today. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome. As you know, here on Uncharted, we love to tell stories about the journey of faith. And we all love stories. And one of the things we really like about stories, especially, is the stories that have like the past and then some transformational moment and then the present and the future, which is this wonderful new reality. And we all love those kinds of stories, but we know that on the journey of faith, that's not quite how it looks, especially when we're in it. Our journey of faith is going to have highs and lows. It's going to have transformational moments, but not just one, multiples, because we are being transformed day by day in the likeness of Jesus. God is not done working in us. And so today we're going to highlight that because I'm going to introduce you to my friend, Ashley Neff, who's also a dear friend of Kayleigh's. So the three of us are going to talk together. And Ashley's story will highlight the fact that not only our expectations sometimes don't happen the way we expect, but also the journey of faith has multiple seasons of transformation and cutting deeper and deeper into our hearts as God wants to pursue us with his incredible love. And so as we hear her story, you're going to see the messiness of the journey of faith. You're going to see Ashley said this, she said, the messiness of miracles. That was an intriguing conversation because I never thought of miracles as messy, but now that we talked about it, they kind of are. So I think you'll find that very interesting. And so I want to introduce you to Ashley. But before I do, also I want to give you a warning. Ashley shares in her journey of faith about her season of life where she had some suicide ideation. And if you're someone who is struggling with suicide ideation or have dealt with suicide ideation or suicide attempts, this show may not be the right show for you. I want you to think about that and pray about that before you listen. But on the show notes, we have put the number for the hotline so that if that's you, then you need it, please seek out help. Again, I believe you're going to hear from Ashley's story that even in those seasons, God was present with her and was ministering to her heart. And as we watch all the different parts of her journey thus far, she still has much more to go. We can see that God never, ever leaves us, forsake us. And he's close to the brokenhearted. And that is incredibly encouraging and hopeful. Let me tell you a little bit about Ashley before we start. So Ashley was born and raised here in Newport Beach, California. And she had this aspiration of living elsewhere someday, but God's plan was for her to be here. And there she is. Also, she had this dream of becoming married and having children at a young age. But she's in her late 30s and still she is not married or obviously having children. And so right from the get-go, Ashley's story shows us that sometimes our expectations don't work out the way we want. And that can create all kinds of difficulties, challenges, and maybe even opportunities for us on the journey of faith. And that has happened with her. Now, Ashley, what she'll tell you that she has had to live with a duality of emotions. I found that to be a very interesting conversation and how in our journey of faith, we can be experiencing both a great deal of pain, but also a great deal of praise, a great deal of heartbreak, and yet deep hope. And so in her journey, she has experienced all of this, and that includes a journey with cancer. At a young age, she has had to deal with cancer. Often, they don't even start screening for cancer until you're in your 40s. But she found that she had cancer, and she went through the treatment. She'll kind of talk about that in the podcast. But what will be most fascinating is to listen to how God ministered to her and how God revealed to her some things that she needed to change, some things that she needed to get in touch with. She grieved deeply through that journey, and God met her in that part as well. And what's beautiful is now God has called her forward to host these incredible retreats for cancer survivors. And all the work that she's doing now is incredible, and how God is using her in a mighty way. So I hope you are encouraged as you listen to her story. It's a little bit of a longer podcast because, man, there were so many incredible nuggets of wisdom through it all. So I hope you enjoy it and that you are blessed. Let's listen in. Hi, Ashley. I am so glad that you're joining us today on the Uncharted podcast, and Kayleigh. And we're going to have such a fun conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. So honored to be here and excited and scared.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait. I was going to say, let's just dump right in. I know I'm going to put you on the spot. I get the special privilege because Ashley is one of my nearest and dearest friends. And so getting to do this on the podcast with you is a special gift and makes me so happy. But why does it make you scared, Ash?
Probably because it goes against my natural tendency for 35 years of my life of sharing the core parts of me that just make me a little uncomfortable. And I'm not great at exposing what's there. And so leaning into that is, but it's what I'm here for.
Wow.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. I was going to say, I so greatly appreciate your willingness to come and share what you feel comfortable to share. And what's beautiful about what we get to do on this podcast is that we get to kind of share with others that the journey of faith for every person is unique. And we have a lot in common, but we also have things that are different from each other, and we learn from each other. And so thank you. Thank you for your willingness to share from your journey. And so we've known you for quite a long time. Which is really fun. So we've seen so many different parts of your life, parts of your journey. But we really don't know how your journey of faith started. So I wonder if you can take us back to kind of how you started with God, and where do you remember? What was your first memory of having kind of oh, God exists, and et cetera?
Gosh, that's a great question. I grew up in a Christian home and went to church for my whole life. And so I think sometimes struggled with feeling like, what was that first moment? Anytime it became available to accept Christ into your heart, I said that prayer every time because I didn't know, did it work? Did God hear me? So it just that was just my thing. But I think one of the first, okay, we'll go there. One of the first encounters I think that I remember was when I was in 4th and 5th grade. I probably thought about too much and had stories or fantasizing of how to end my life a little too much. And I remember being in a room and kind of feeling like for a while that either no one would notice if I was gone, and or that I'd be doing other people a favor if I was. And it clearly wasn't my own thought, because I was struggling with those that somehow, I remember thinking, or the thought came to me, no one is worth sacrificing your life for. And I feel like God has been fighting for my physical life for my whole life. I was born into the world blue, which probably freaked my parents out a little bit. And there are so many things in life where I shouldn't be here today, whether it is recently going through cancer or even previously having multiple car accidents or ATV accidents or snowmobiling accidents, and things where I just shouldn't be here. And it is little miracles along the way that I still am. And I think that growing up in the church, I had this pressure a little bit of being right, being perfect, putting that best foot forward, having everything together. Our family's always been very involved in the church, and my dad was an elder in the church. And so a part of me felt like a little bit of a PK kid, even though I wasn't a PK kid. And to kind of have things, to be that good Christian girl. And I think even in that, I walked through childhood a little bit in my own arrogance of my own goodness, where I was doing the right things, I was saying the right things, I wasn't making these big mistakes, or I wasn't doing what so-and-so was doing, and kind of internally chalking this up as I was earning good Christian points. But really what that was more so growing, a little Pharisee girl than a little Christian girl, and a little versus a disciple even, where I had the intellectual answers for life. Because the intellectual answers, and even in Sunday school, they're awarded, they're accepted, but the honest answers are sometimes the hardest to come by. And I struggled with that. As I had mentioned in the beginning, exposing what's inside and underneath is not my go-to. And part of that came from, which I will totally preface what's next with, I was blessed with very incredible parents and an incredible childhood. They love me, I love them, and we're all still learning. And there are things that I'm sure in their childhood, they were affected by their parents. I was affected by my parents and impacted, and I'm going to do the same thing to my kids as well, and send them to therapy for something. But
yes, we do. Yes, we do.
it's natural. It's just what happens. And so for me, there was not a safe place for emotions, and kind of being validated in that. And so I felt like, whether it was, in positive or negative ways, things were always critiqued or criticized or corrected. And feelings, I was told, didn't exist, or opinions were wrong. And so I learned that there just wasn't a place for that. And so I hid a lot, and I just kept it in. And a lot of that then became so unaddressed in my life that it would explode out and leak out in anger or in argument outbursts with my parents. And because I didn't know how to hold honest space for what I was feeling and process through what I was navigating. And even after I had communicated to my parents that I was having these suicidal thoughts, more like I threatened them with it. Not that I actually got close to doing anything physically about it, but they led me to counseling. And it was in that counseling appointment that the counselor took the side of my parents in that. And I was so crushed and hurt in that moment, because again, I felt like I was unseen and unheard. And so it taught me to, okay, I'm just going to put on a face to show I'm okay. I've moved past these thoughts. I no longer need this. I no longer need counseling. And I did. And I moved forward with putting more of a strong foot forward than a raw foot forward.
So what age were you when you went to that therapy session where that happened?
Probably around 11.
And when do you feel like, because I know you,
Yeah.
right? I know that that's not something that you like live out now,
Yeah.
that you're like thinking about suicide, which bless the
Mhm.
Lord. But what was that, if it wasn't age 11 when that therapy session happened? Where was that point where God did, or you did the work to like kind of go past those thoughts? And what do you think that it was that caused the change?
That's a great question. I don't know if there was a specific moment. I think it was continuing to see God's hand and fingerprints on different things in my life. I mean, it took me to the age of 25, 26 to ever walk back into a counselor's door. And it's taken me to my 30s and now to actually navigate embracing these emotions in life and allowing myself to kind of go there. And I think that that was part of what actually made going through cancer so scary for me, was in being diagnosed. It wasn't so much cancer as much as it was fearing being exposed through the process. Because I just hadn't let myself, others, or God even into those things. And I think in a lot of the ways that God's physically protected me over the years, it's just been his constant pursuit to show me and heal me in that if I can be so safe and protected and fought for and loved in his physical arms, then my heart is just as safe. And I can begin to trust him again with that in those spaces as well.
As I listened to you, I kind of got two pictures of your heart. One of them was this, like you said, growing a Pharisee woman or young woman, which was more an internal expression of like, look, I'm good, and I know it, right? And or at least I'm doing all the things, and then yet that other side, which is so like wow in my heart, just like it hurts my heart just to imagine the feelings that you had, that like you weren't supposed to be here, that nobody cared about you in this, like those are so opposite, right? Like one is this, I'm so good, it's like this big high of like I got it together, and then the other is I nobody cares if I'm not even around. And to carry both for a while with the same God, right, in the picture. I'm curious, were you cognizant that you were kind of experiencing both of those at the same time? Or is it more like looking back and seeing like your journey? And regardless of how you answer that, also tell me, how would you say you saw God in meeting both of those Ashleys, right? Both of those aspects of Ashley's heart.
I don't know if I was cognizant of the duality at the time. And I think that there was this almost strive to perfection on the outside and or even internally, which I'm very far from perfect. I know that we can't be perfect, but yet there was still this underlying trying to achieve perfection. And when I didn't, since there was, I think, so much shame that was around the emotions, having them feeling like, I wasn't, that my faith was also even less than because of feeling certain emotions, and that kind of just more of the mental tennis match, if you will, that I would just always play these tapes in my mind of, well, I should have done this, or I could have done that, or I wish I said this, or I wish I did that. And so there was just this ping ponging, if you will. And I would sometimes do some of that self shaming for so long until then there was just this new movie almost created in my head that I was able to believe almost to get me out of feeling those uglier, deeper, uncomfortable emotions, to then move on and do something else. I don't know if that actually.
It sounds like maybe there are two sides of the same coin then, right? One would lead to feeling, okay, I'm accomplished. I've done my part. I'm doing well. And then, but if you fall short, then it goes to the other direction. Well, I'm not, right? And this
I'm not loved. I'm
that-
not wanted. I'm not accepted.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not a psychologist, but now I'm thinking, oh, maybe they're part of the same thing, the same mechanism working on the two ends of it, right? So, and how, you said you kept saying the prayer, hoping that this one caught, right? That, okay, did I get it right this time? That sense of insecurity that I even please God, did I say the right thing so that God will love me? So it's a combination of how you feel about how people see you, but also like, does God love me? And I mean, how long do you feel, if it's even all to today, so I'm not assuming anything, but like, how has that painted for you this relationship between you and God? And how long did that go? And is it still an issue for you at times?
I think that it went on for a really long time. And over the last several years has just been a really radical, hard pursuit of God wooing me back and showing me how much He does love me, and how much there is beauty in life, in how He created me, and in just the honesty of everything. That Yeah, I think it was, for a season, hard to believe that I was loved by God, and that um, I was loved by family or loved by others. And not that they don't, but I think that it was just hard to feel. And so in that, I lost a lot of my own opinions, and kind of am now still a recovering people pleaser. And um, that yeah, I just actually lost my train of thought. That happens
No,
these
that's okay.
days.
And the thing is people pleasing. By the way, like, you are talking to two people who also experience that at times. It is like so real. And it's so interesting to experience it specifically along your journey of faith, right? Because then we try to not only people please the exterior world, but also the relationship we have with God, assuming that we can please our way into right relationship with Him, instead of recognizing that just right where we are, as broken as we are, as flawed as we are, we can come that way. And through a relationship with Him, He will help us, like, you know, be made righteous and be made holy and all of those things, which doesn't mean we're not flawed. It just means that we are seen, clean and white as snow. Now, I correct me if I'm wrong, Ash, but I believe that, like, a lot of this shift for you was happening before you got your diagnosis of cancer. But I feel like cancer almost like projected you into change. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, was that your experience, and how was that for you going through that experience?
Yeah, I would definitely say that in the last 10 years of life, even, it was, I had my whole life planned. I was going to get married between 24 and 26. I was going to have kids no later than 30. I was going to be the soccer mom and with orange slices and be on PTA and all these things. Like, my plan of what I expected was mapped as a kid. And I am still single and I don't have kids. And so I never planned for this season of life. And in this season, there's been a lot of growth that God has done in my life, for healing and redeeming and reclaiming parts of me. And that I never, gosh, had I gotten married 10 years ago, that would have been a way different Ashely than getting married today. And even before cancer, there were some big things in my life that God was shifting and kind of preparing the way for. In COVID hitting and a month and a half into COVID, God kind of calling me to move out and live on my own. And that was just everything that's against my personality, what I like. I don't want to be alone. I love being with people. And it was calling me into a space of living on my own. And that was a miracle story in and of itself, where I finally said yes to following God's heart that He gave me. And living on my own it created a safe haven for me to kind of rediscover who I was and reclaim parts of me that I had lost over the years, of even just answering questions of, what does Ashely want? What does Ashely need? What does Ashely like? Because I had grown so much into kind of going along or just going with the flow to make things easier. And so He was setting the stage a lot. And then being diagnosed with cancer and stepping into that journey, surgery for me was something that both physically and metaphorically just kind of cut me open. And there was no going back. And I think that in that, I realized how messy miracles are.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Where in the Bible, and growing up so much and reading scripture, I'm someone who, I love a destination. I am not a good journeyer. I like to just rush to the end. I want to be there.
I've seen you drive. I understand.
Pretty much. A lot of people wouldn't argue that.
Yeah, I followed you on an ATV, and I thought, that girl's crazy. She's going so fast.
Yeah.
Like, look at this beautiful country. You're not even looking at it.
Nope. Just distracted. Which is so funny, because I love trains and watching things go by, but yet at the same time, I just want to arrive. And so in scripture, I rush to the end of the story, because it's the good part. It's the miracle part. It's where God does change. He does His transformation, but yet we don't leave room for the mess of life. And in growing up with, emotion, not being able to share and express them, it's kind of like somehow I started to believe that you're just taught to hide it and don't show it and don't feel it and move past it, stay positive, have faith, as if the messiness contributes to a lack of faith. And yet scripture's full of miracles, and on either end of those miracles, there's a bunch of mess. And
do you have a favorite? Is there one that kind of comes to mind as an example for those who are listening? I'm thinking of a couple myself, but I'm curious if you have a favorite. Yeah.
Oh gosh, a favorite? I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I feel like I've been living in so much of those stories. Even, I suppose, just the Mark 4 of the disciples getting in a boat, walking into a storm, God calming the storm, and getting on the other side. And they're just after coming off of witnessing God do these other miracles. And then you're in the middle of a storm and you forget who's with you in the boat. And then He can calm the storms, He calms the seas, and you move on. And then you just forget that He just did that in the next thing. And so or just even the physical healings of what he did, even with the woman who bled for 12 years. 12 years, that's a long time of mess, physical mess, relational mess, emotional mess, literally. And then she's healed in an instant, but there's then mess still on the other side of re-engaging in society and relationships and community. And so it became my fight to feel, and to learn how to hold the extremes of life and of emotions, and realize that they can happen all at the same time, and give myself permission to do that, where it's grief and gratitude, if it's pain and praise, if it's heartbreak and hope, that they can coexist. It doesn't have to just be all one or all the other. And I think that kind of an easy example is the movie Inside Out. I love it. It's a Disney movie. But it's so true, where growing up, I just wanted to turn everything yellow. I did not want things to be sad or frustrated or angry. I just wanted to turn it all yellow. And learning that our life and experiences can be both colors. They can be multiple colors. And yeah.
That's powerful. Ashley, thinking about how long you were processing through this and where you are today, I'm really reminded of young women today who, say, high school young women who just coming out of college, who or going into college, who might be struggling to a really dark season in their lives, and they feel like this is never going to end. Like, I'm going to be in this dark place, and I need to do something to end this terrible experience. And so you endured through all that, and you're now getting to see, now in hindsight, like how God was working and how He's working now, and what He's igniting in your heart. And I'm thinking, like, oh, what would you say to your 11-year-old or your 15-year-old Ashely or your 23-year-old Ashely who was in the middle of it, right? Oh, gosh, even for that matter, your 31-year-old Ashely, right? What would you
38-year-old
say to
Ashely.
her? 30, like, what would you say to her? Because you're not done. Like you said, the miracle is messy before and after, and sometimes during. Those guys who were being, we were just talking recently about the guys who were being brought down to the roof, right? It could be messy even through. But even then, there's something we can tell ourselves in the past, which that means there's someone out there who might be there and who might need to hear an encouragement. Yeah. What would you say to them?
I think that I think it's the reminder of, even when you feel alone, and even when you are alone in a room, that you're still so seen, and you're still so loved, and you're still so accepted, with no matter what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what you're walking through. And that it's finding the courage to believe that, and believe God at His word, over the lies of the enemy, and over the words of other people, or even the stories that you tell yourself that you've built up in your mind. And it took me to cancer to almost believe that. I'm sitting in my home recording this, and you say that, and I'm reminded of when I just poured it out on my floor. It was a season where I found faith from the floor, and I would just lay in a fetal position and cry. And I've never felt more held and more loved, and more seen by God in those moments, than ever before.
I think it's beautiful. Although I know in this season it was painful and like tearing at your heart and at your mind. Um and just such a new process. Like I really feel like if people knew you before all of this and knew you today, they would say it's like very possibly two different people, like just the amount of change you allowed your faith, your mindset, your heart, your posture about life to go through. It's incredible. It's incredible and beautiful. And I think a really great example about how the journey of faith is so uncharted and so unexpected. And so we don't know where it's going because I don't think that you or any of us who are walking with you in that journey would have looked at you when you were diagnosed in 2021 and say, "Oh yeah, like this is where Ashley's going to be in 2023." Like there's just
Right.
that's crazy. Like it's just amazing to see just like but I really feel like in the midst of that, you found like a true, honest, like fully transparent relationship with the Lord. And I think it's so beautiful to witness. I wonder, like, so we know a bit about how you were diagnosed with cancer. Can you tell us a little bit about your cancer journey and about kind of like the process you went through and where you are now?
Yeah. I was diagnosed in 2021 with breast cancer. And although my mom also had it when she was 42, we're not genetically connected. And so it's kind of just this weird, odd thing that we were both super young being diagnosed. But in some sense, my mom kind of saved my life in that because I wouldn't have been as aware of myself, because you typically don't get mammograms or tests until you're 40. And if that was the case, I might have not have actually seen the age of 40. And so I was grateful that it was caught early. And I remember, before being diagnosed, I almost felt prepared to hear it. And God gave me the biggest blessing in I was super scared, I can say was now, of needles. Gone through a lot now. And so not as much anymore.
Yeah.
But when I was on getting ready, prepped for biopsy, I looked over at the screen one last time just to see what was going on. And God had changed or had made, the shape of my tumor into a heart on the screen. And
Wow.
God, yeah, I lost it then. And I always still continue to, because he communicates to me in hearts all the time. And I felt like in that moment, it was a gift of him saying, like, I'm in this with you and it's going to be okay. And you're so loved. So whether that was at the time a gift just to get through biopsy or a gift to get me through a season that was coming, I was grateful. And in that though, in hearing him, it's going to be okay, I thought, like, I already knew the ending before it started. And I felt like I was walking out my miracle, but it didn't mean I got to skip the mess of it all. And I think that in my old self's definition of it's going to be okay, I thought, oh, it's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be smooth. I created all these expectations around it. I knew what to expect with cancer. My parents had both gone through it before. And so I knew what it looked like. I knew how people show up. I knew how you choose your doctor team. I know how you go through all these procedures. And then what ended up sort of wrecking me more in the process was all of the unmet expectations, the changed in expectations, the broken expectations, because none of my journey actually ended up turning out the way that I expected. And so I started to go to doctor's appointments, and I would get conflicting messages from every single one. And some people thought it was not as aggressive, then it was aggressive, and every information changed. And so it was confusing, it was complicated, and trying to navigate, what do I choose? And then I moved forward, and I ended up doing surgery first, because mine was hormonally positive. And I wanted, at the time, since I also wanted to preserve the opportunity for a family still, I went through a round of egg retrieval because chemo was on the table and that would affect things. In doing that, kind of talk about that messiness. I thought that when I signed up, no one really signs up for cancer. But that it was going to be the spectrum of things. You do surgery, chemo, radiation, lose your hair, all the things. And so right after egg retrieval, then chemo, it was a miracle, got taken off the table. But at first, I actually struggled to be excited about that or happy about it. I just cried because I just went through egg retrieval and I never wanted to do that. And it felt like a very invasive process. And
Did they take all of your eggs or just some? I don't know much about it. So
yeah, so you inject yourself with about 11 to 13 days of hormone shots to kind of put them through a cycle of maturation and enlargement in order to then be extracted. And I previously had one of my ovaries removed about 10 years ago. And so I only had one ovary left. So I didn't have what I felt like a lot to go off of. And it was one of those where God continuing to do above and beyond what I could ask or imagine. He gifted me with 47 eggs from one ovary, which was unbelievable. And, there's 35, I think, that are frozen from that, which I know is not the case for a lot of women, even with two. So not something that I take lightly either. And then
but the procedure has a long-term effect on how then you would have children in the future is what I'm trying to see, right? So
IVF, so it's basically like egg retrieval. People do it for all sorts of different reasons, but it doesn't impact your ability to have children in the future. But the process is very extensive. Like it
that's what I'm saying.
requires,
Yeah. You don't get to
hormone.
do it the natural quote way. You have to do it through a medical process.
If you choose to use the eggs that you retrieved, yes. Like she could, anybody who went through an egg retrieval process could technically still get pregnant on their own. But if you were to choose to use the eggs, if she had gone through chemo and needed to use the eggs, then yeah, you cannot get pregnant through natural ways. You have to go through and have it you have to basically go through the whole IVF process. So, get the egg inseminated and then see which eggs are viable and then have them re-put back into your body. And so it's a big process, and you go through very intense hormones to pull that many eggs out of your fallopian tube all at the same time. Like that's basically right. You're like
Yes.
pulling all of it's just crazy. Now we're
So in
getting
the
way too
big
scientific.
picture, but in the big picture, I guess the reason I wanted to go down this rabbit
Yeah.
because I'm interested. I don't know about it, obviously, but also more importantly, I'm still hearing the message that you had as a young girl about yourself. You said you were born blue, right? And then you had all these different things, and just this constant message of almost like being this attempt to take you out, right? and and so I'm sensing in my heart how even these experiences just augmented that message in the midst of your cancer journey. And I'm wondering if that's so. That's just my intuition, but also like how did God meet you there in the sort of like here's that message again in a different way?
yeah. No, that's spot on in that, because it felt like there were, you know, dreams. It was the weight of dreams being threatened, before they even had the opportunity to be. And that was one of those things. And um, he he met me in finding a place to just 100% surrender and be on my knees. And I ended up writing a letter to, I was not expecting this, to a future kid of before that happened. And when chemo was still on the table, of, I don't know how I'm going to be able to have you. But I trust, and I let it all go. And God just gave it all back. And chemo was no longer needed, even though everything pointed that direction. And my oncotype score came back at the lowest number that no longer required chemo, that it wouldn't be effective for me and my type of cancer. And so that allowed me and allows me to have the ability to still be a mom one day, and carry a kid if I am blessed with the opportunity to. And
So I would love to hear, and I'd love for our listeners to hear, you were, okay, I get to share the news. I'm going to share the news. You were able to say you were cancer free months, really months after all of this. Chemo was off the table. You did radiation. And you, at the end of, in December, you were able to say, beginning of December, you were able to say, I am cancer free. And you are a cancer survivor, which is so, again, just right, the messy middle, the messy process. I think it's been just such a testament to your story, and what you've shared today is this constant reminder of like the miracle happened, but it was messy in the process. Um, what I love is what came even after that as well, is like where God led you. Would you share with us kind of how God led you into what you're doing now and what you've gotten the opportunity to do specifically with cancer?
yeah, yeah, it's one of those things where I kind of say that I am healed and still healing, because it is a journey, and it's a journey that doesn't stop just because treatment does once you've walked through cancer. And so it actually got a lot harder for me before it got better, after treatment, because radiation, it compounds on each other. And so the fatigue increases, and the exhaustion increases, and there's a lot of different components there. And then medication, all the things. And so I thought I was in this great place that I am leaning in and processing better than I ever have before. I'm expressing and sharing. And then I realized in going to a retreat that, wow, there was so much under the surface. And it was there that God gave me the dream of uh, creating a space for just cancer survivors to come and retreat and find a place of healing and hope and laughter, to kind of just touch those spaces of our minds and our hearts and our souls that still need to be loved on and cared for, because you physically are fighting for physical health, but a lot of those other components of what makes us a whole person get backburnered in the process. And so I had that dream last year at the time that I was stepping away from my job, and was able to then fast forward at the beginning of this year, engage in conversation where God opened some incredible doors very quickly, to put on this retreat for cancer survivors, and do our first one, which was a dream come true. earlier this year. That was
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was.
Is there another one coming?
Yes, but there is not the where, when, who.
Okay.
After that first one, I want to do and help lead as many of these as I possibly can. And I would love to do 7 of them tomorrow, but that's not how God works. And so it is in the works.
So
I
cool.
love that.
You also do another event, which was never intended to be like what I think it's become. That's coming up in October. What's that event?
October. What's October?
Your Stand Up for Cancer.
Oh, so
gotta look at my calendar.
You're just like, let me double check. Yeah.
Right. I did it last year as a thank you to my community for helping me stand, and a fundraiser to help raise money for someone who came after me. And this year we are doing the same thing during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but partnering with a lot of other survivors as well, to just expand, coming together and doing something fun, bringing our communities together to stand up for cancer and to continue to support those who come after us and are diagnosed. And I love the National Cancer Institute's definition of survivor, where you are a survivor from the moment of diagnosis through the duration of your life. You don't have to wait till you're done with treatment or you hit your 2, 5, or 10 year mark. We get to be survivors today because we're surviving.
Wow. I love that. Ashley, we hope it's an amazing experience for you and those who are standing with you. I mean, we get to stand with you, and we are thrilled about that. And, especially I think this is very helpful for those who are, I'm not 40 yet, so I don't have to worry about that. Like it's a great awareness of, no, it's something that can hit at a young age. And just getting aware, getting to know what are the symptoms, what do we need to do to notice when our body changes, so that we can get the right treatment. So thank you for sharing that in a very practical way. But I feel very blessed to hear your journey of faith and hear, I don't want to say the messiness of it, because just the incredible love of God that He has poured into you, in all of it, in the highs and the lows and everything. I mean, I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by the way God can hold us in all of that, through your life. And I am so excited about what God is calling you towards in the future. Uh, being that now, I don't know, I sense that you feel more seen and more validated than perhaps you did before, in that your emotions do matter, and that you are not too much, and that you are precious to many of us, and of course precious to God. And I hope that boldness takes you through whatever comes next, right? Because we don't know what tomorrow will be. So they're not saying like, okay, great, I'm on the other side now, it's all going to be good. So if there's one thing your story reminds us, is our expectations don't always work out the way we thought, and we have to hold things with open hands, right?
It reminds me, as we close out today's podcast, just so much of the story of Abram and Sarah, and Abram becoming Abraham, in that, like, he was promised to be a father of many nations, and then nothing happened for 25 years. And then in his old age, God said, I am bringing you a son. And Sarah laughed. Like, how is this possible? And yet they did have a son. And then they have a son, and God basically says to sacrifice him, right? And as I am mom, wait, correct.
Yep.
I am on. Yeah, okay, great.
Yep. Same guy.
Tim erased that. Yeah. All of a sudden I was like, am I right? Okay. So let's go back. Tim, you'll cut that for me. Appreciate you. Okay. So, so anyways, Abraham then is told to sacrifice his son. And brings his son willingly to the mountain. And as he gets to the mountain to sacrifice his son, God says, actually, I have given you a ram here in the bushes, basically, to sacrifice instead. And it kept happening like that. Like Abraham's life was constantly this moment of like, I think I know where I'm going. I think I understand. God's telling me, God is literally telling me he's going to do this for me. But then it doesn't look like how I anticipated it or expected it. And I think that that's just such a true story to how you have experienced your journey of faith. And honestly, probably so many of us. I often feel like when I hear your story and your experience, it feels very similar and very reminiscent of what I've experienced along my journey of faith as well, which is like, I set all of these plans and rules, and then nothing happens the way I anticipated
Yep.
it.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for just being so transparent and vulnerable, sharing your story with us today. Friends, if you're listening today and this resonates with you, we would absolutely love to hear from you. I also just want to put a little asterisk on, hey, we talked about suicide today. And if that's something that you're struggling with, please, please, please feel free to reach out for help, seek help, get into therapy, call the suicide hotline. We'll make sure to put that in our
Show notes.
show notes. Thank you. Or, reach out to a friend or family. It is not something you have to go through alone. It is a very heavy and real topic. It doesn't make you less of a believer either. It's just something that sometimes we go through. And so I just want to kind of make sure that that is also noted. And we are so grateful for each and every one of you who are listening. Please, please, please be a part of this conversation with us. Leave us email. Also, you can actually leave reviews with comments in Spotify now, which is really cool. Or we are on YouTube doing these podcasts as well. You can see us there. So please feel free to leave comments down there or on our social media. We would love to just have you be a part of this with us.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for being with us, and God bless you and all the things that you're doing.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Uncharted Podcast with Inez Franklin. Learn more about Inez at unchartedpod.com. Follow Inez's journey on Instagram at Inez Franklin. Sign up for our email list to receive direct access to online experiences and more. Thanks for listening, and join us again next time.